Hello, I just wanted to share some books that I've gathered on the theme of islands for our island themed month in the Creative Flock. And I pulled out a few, 5 in total. So there's 3 that are kind of more, what we call middle grade, kind of young readers, more confident readers, probably more confident readers, I would say. These 3 here. All based on islands or have a theme of islands. One picture book, which is an old favourite. I imagine it's a favourite of a lot of people who enjoy children's books by the wonderful Benji Davies. And then also this, which is non-fiction, but it's I'm terrible at pronouncing her name, Tove Jansson and her partner, Tuulikki Pietila, and I'm so sorry for the pronunciation, it's really terrible. I did try to look it up and try and remember it and I just couldn't, but Tuuti for short. So Tove and Tuuti. And also their kind of person that actually helped create them, create the cabin for them on this island that they lived on. These are diary entries and kind of basically just notes and thoughts from their time spent, about 25 years spent on an island, living on an island together, Tove and her partner. And also some beautiful ink washes and prints as well from Tuuti. So I'm going to share those with you and just kind of talk you through why I enjoy them. It's interesting that I have quite a few books that are kind of, I seem to be quite drawn to books based on islands. And when I wrote my story for Folktale Week, it was set on an island, and it has something and I've visited a remote island, Lundy, which is just got a little guidebook just behind me, off the coast of Cornwall, and obviously I'm going to Skoma Island in Wales, off the coast of Wales at the end of the month. So I feel kind of like drawn to islands and inspired by them. I'm still not 100% sure why, but I'm still really curious and thinking this has been really nice this month to think about why. Just to kind of go a bit deeper into the themes and the reasons for it, and how maybe some of that can influence my own either illustrations or other creative responses like my writing, because I would like to do more writing, or maybe develop the story that I wrote for Folktale Week. So yeah, I'm really interested this is quite a nice way of exploring the theme and learning as I go and delving into that kind of that curiosity that I have about it and trying to uncover and figure out why. So this is going to be a really nice process. And also thinking about why storytellers, why authors and illustrators have found islands to be such a rich, I suppose, setting, and why it's so popular as a setting for storytellers. So I hope you enjoy this. I'm going to now change to film from above so you can see the books more clearly. And I will put links to all of these books in the post. And if you have any questions or if you'd like to chat further about them, obviously use the comments section in the post, or you can just message me or pop something on we have a chat for paid members, which is an open chat throughout the month, like more of a creative, it's like a creative chat thread. You can ask something there. But either way, I just hope you really enjoy it, and I hope maybe this has inspired you to seek out these books. And because we always need more inspiration. We always need more reasons to buy books, don't we? This was quite a recent one and I really love it. But anyway, I will switch now to the view, and I hope you really enjoy this little kind of talk through. Hi. So here we go. So here's a little collection here. And I'll just start from the top really. I'll just move these out of the way. the moment. So like I said, when I was looking at kind of books that inspired me, when it comes to things that are set, books that are set on islands, or islands are really important to the narrative element of it. I actually I had quite a few, which makes me think I am kind of maybe drawn to things that are based on islands. There is something very magical and quite romantic, I think, about an island, especially one that's a bit more remote. And I think as a setting, well, obviously I would say that islands feature in storytelling throughout, well, I think in literary history is very rich. Certainly Greek mythology, and also in Shakespeare's text, islands would be featured. And I think, and then obviously, this is just a small collection of what I have, but there will be dozens, hundreds, scores of books where islands feature. And then you've got things like classic children's fiction, Robinson Crusoe, Treasure Island. Anything that has like a maritime theme to it, there's always some sort of island involved, whether it's somebody's marooned or buried or treasure being hidden. But I think it is a really very popular setting. I think it's that kind of small world. I'm just like appealing of it's kind of the fact that it's like a world where you can kind of control a bit more what's going on, especially if it's like on a small scale. And maybe like the feeling of it's kind of familiar, but you can also add this kind of unfamiliar element to it, because there's kind of an understanding that maybe islands can be magical places or places between worlds, and the idea of there being magic on an island seems kind of almost normal because of their remoteness, and maybe some islands haven't been really explored fully. I think they're quite ripe for setting your scene there where it's somewhere where it's something new and different, and maybe your character has to explore something completely new and uninhabited. When I went to Lundy, I found it to be like it was really exciting, quite liberating to be somewhere where there was just, you were like dropped off on a boat and then that was it. You couldn't get off the island until the boat came back. So there was something quite almost, it's kind of like exciting, frightening, but liberating about that. And there's this kind of familiarity to these places, but also not because of sometimes the barrenness, or because there's a very particular type of habitat, ecosystem, and also the fact that the wildlife there, it's their domain, which makes it so special. Which is why I'm so excited about going to Skoma. And interestingly, this is something that Jansson talks about in this, about the birds just being dominating this small island that they live on, to the point where it drives them insane. It drives them crazy because the birds are just, it's their domain. They would, poo on them, dive bomb them. Like the terns are quite really aggressive. All these seabirds are very aggressively trying to claim their space and make sure that the human inhabitants there no, it's their island. So I find that really interesting. The idea that you have to treat this island well. You have to treat it with respect, because you're at its mercy. You can't really control it, because it's basically it's at the mercy of the elements and the sea and what surrounds it. So as a human, you can't control the space, and obviously it's the domain of animals and nature. The idea it can't be tamed. I just love the wildness of it, and the fact that you can use it as you can kind of basically imprint on it your own ideas of magic or myth, and it kind of feels okay. So it also is like, think about it in terms of like a place that maybe where you can travel to and then be imprisoned on or marooned on, like you would on, you know, say if you were marooned by pirates or something. You can hide, it's a place to hide and go be away from people, very much like here. It's like they kind of sort out solitude. And it's kind of like it's a place of ending. So these two books here, which feature themes of death and end of life. So yeah, it's so rich. And it was only really when I was reading through all of these again and making notes about them that I realised just how rich a place, how rich it can, how rich it can be in terms of as like a location for a setting for a story. And islands obviously can be very different. They can be barren and remote, or they can be rich and really lush and full of life. So yeah, I think it's just there's so many possibilities when you're thinking about maybe including an island in your stories. So I'm going to run through these books briefly. But yeah, I think it's just I really enjoyed going through them because I have I still don't have the answers as to exactly why I like islands as a place. I mean, obviously I live on an island. It's, big-ish island. And why I kind of find the idea of going to an island really magical and fascinating and exciting. So that's something I'm still curious about and I'm still trying to work out. But I'm hoping, through these books, maybe I'll help you understand it a bit more. And give you some really inspirational stories to read, hopefully, if these types of books are interesting to you. I mean, I've got quite a nice range, I think, that hopefully they'll appeal to many of you. And then, it's just another excuse to buy a book. So I'll start with this one. This is my most recent book that I bought. Michael Morpurgo, of course, the legend Michael Morpurgo, legendary storyteller, and Benji Davies, who's also a legendary illustrator and creator of worlds. It was just a perfect match for these two. But it's a story about. It's quite an adventure story. There's a lot that Morpurgo kind of brings in to the narrative, but it's hope, friendship, and kindness is the main theme of this story. And I'll read the blurb. So one stormy night, a four-masted schooner was driven by angry seas onto the rocks. The sails were soon in tatters, 3 of her masts broken. She was helpless in the towering waves and was sinking fast. From high in his lighthouse, Benjamin Postlethwaite saw it all. He knew at once what he had to do. This was the start of my adventure. When all hope seemed lost, we saw through the darkness a boat coming for us. One man in a tiny rowing boat that was riding mountainous seas. The memory of that night was to stay with me all my life, and so I made up my mind to go back to Puffin Island and find the man who had saved our lives. And that's when the story starts, about this boy who then journeys back. This kindness never left him, and then he goes back to the Puffin Island and almost like returns the favour. And it's this like kind of, I say small act of kindness, it's quite a big act of kindness that this man did in rescuing people from a boat. But then that has this knock-on effect. And it's a really beautiful story, and it teaches us a bit about the ecology of this island and the Puffins who return to it. And yeah, it's full of hope, and it's really about friendship. And it's just beautifully written in the way that Mike Morpurgo writes. It's just incredible. It's just beautifully written. So that is a absolute one of my big recommendations. This one, I think in a similar way, it's got a lighthouse involved in it. So that's kind of a big part of it, because in this, the man who rescues the people on the boat is a lighthouse keeper. And there's something very romantic, I think, about a lighthouse and living on a lighthouse and being able to see, and it's also a very small and closed space. I just think there's something very magical about it and romantic. But this is also set on an island. This is in Scotland, off the coast of Scotland, Shetland Islands. And it's kind of a similar, I'd say probably similar age range reading wise. So probably you'll have to be maybe a bit of a confident reader. What I will do before I move on actually is I will show you some of the illustrations in here, because actually it's quite a little bit different. I mean, the Puffin you could recognise as Benji Davies and some of this colour palette definitely, and the style. But then he has these. I mean, I absolutely love this illustration of the boat. It's amazing. So it's really nice to see these different, slightly more grown-up, older illustrations that he's doing. So it's a bit more muted, but very dramatic. And he's just so good at building these worlds and making you really feel that you're in them. So yeah, very, very good, very clever. And this, by contrast, is slightly different. It's more graphic, has a more of a graphic feel. So the only colour they use is yellow in this book. And it's black and white tonal with the yellow, which is almost a bit like, well, it kind of ties in nicely with this yellow weather kind of fisherman's coat, but also this idea of, has kind of a magical feel to it anyway, but it's like the beam of light from a lighthouse. So it ties in really beautifully. But this book, yeah, aimed at, again, at slightly older readers, maybe. I think just because of the theme. So it's not incredibly dark and difficult. It's just that there's a theme of it's like mental health, poor mental health and mental illness, I suppose, and depression. But it's also similar to the Puffin Keeper, where it has a really strong theme of hope and friendship running through it, and courage as well. And the main character, Julia, it's her kind of experience of being, from her perspective, and living on this island in this lighthouse, and how she deals with her mum's mental health, and how she tries to help, and what she learns probably about herself and her family, and about maybe again a bit about kindness, about being kind to others. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book, and it's quite powerful, quite emotional. As you can probably see, like it is an emotional. It can be, depending on your experiences, it can be a bit hard to read, but I really loved it. I love the illustrations. It's just so atmospheric and really, really breathtaking. So yeah, that's another recommendation, but it's set on the island, and I like the idea that there's just three of them in this space in this lighthouse. There are some other characters that come in, but it's not, it's not a lot of different characters. And the idea of this remoteness gives the characters a lot of time to like reflect, and it gives them a lot of space to reflect and to think about what's happening. And there's also, he's Kiran, Millwood, Hargrave, very poetic writing. So yeah, it's a very beautiful book. I really enjoyed that and highly recommend it. And I'll move on to this one, which is different. It's so it's Tove Jansson and I'm going to say Tuulikki Pietila, and it's when the creator of the Moomin books and her partner, who's a designer and artist, and they lived on an island. They moved to an island off the coast of Finland, like the Gulf of Finland, very remote. I don't know if you can see, very remote island, really battered by the elements, really tough living conditions. And this is extracts from the diary entries of Tove, and also that's her on the island, on the hill, you can see. And the island was called Clovaren, and they had a merchant seaman who came and helped them build cabin. And what I really love is the fact it's interspersed with this really beautiful aqua tints and ink washes from Tuulikki, who created these. And I think it just really brings across the remoteness and the solitude and the space of the island. And they lived there for about 25 years. And I mean, I don't know many people who would be able to survive on a remote island living in the way they did for that long. But they really, their lives were really energized by the solitude, and their art and their creativity was energized by that solitude. Until it got to a point where they got a bit too old and they had to move because it was too hard a place to live in. So yeah, I was fascinated by this, the idea that you would just move away from everything, all of the luxuries and comforts of life, and move somewhere so remote. It's incredible. And I think I did mention about the birds. And the birds were just so angry at them for taking over their island. So they had to learn to live with them and respect. And obviously, there was a lot of respect for them and the wildlife and the animals that lived there. But yeah, hard, very, very difficult way of life. But yeah, I loved these washes and I loved these paintings. And really interesting just to read about their daily life. So some of these entries are from the guy that came and helped them build the cabin, and then some of the longer entries are from Tove. Yeah, so I thought that was a really interesting perspective. Yeah, on living on an island, incredibly unique. Absolutely love this map as well. Really beautiful. So that's a book that I really treasure. And this one is, again, it's quite a recent one, Frances Hardinge, Island of Whispers, illustrated by Emily Gravett, who is a predominantly picture book illustrator, but she also does illustrate fiction. And I don't think I've seen her do anything like this before. What I love the simplicity of the illustrations, this kind of graphic, the black and white with just these blue coming through. So in the same way that you have this simplicity here with Julian the Shark. And yeah, the simplicity of it, it's kind of echoed in, and I think it just makes you focus so much on the text and the story. Really loved that aspect of it. And this one it's based on an island, and it has a bit of the kind of Greek mythology to it. The idea is that there's a ferryman who brings spirits over from an island to another remote island, because that's the place where they pass over. So they're kind of almost in purgatory in limbo, but until they go to this island. And it's told from the perspective of a boy who's the ferryman's son, who has to take on his responsibility as a ferryman very suddenly, and he has to learn about how he has to figure out on the way as he has to figure out as he goes about how he does this really, really important job. And yeah, I think the idea of Island as an ending, but also a beginning for these spirits. They're like kind of having it, then they're moving on to their spirit life, their next life, but it's an ending as well. And I love that, and I love the links with like old stories, and there's magic. There's kind of a magical element to this as well, and there are people who are trying to almost harness this power throughout the book. There's some people in this book that they try and like harness the power and understand it, but it can't be understood. So it's something that's kind of like unspoken, but you kind of go through. You believe in it, but you don't understand it. You just have to accept it. And I suppose it's kind of parallels with like your death. You don't understand like why we live and die, but we have to accept it. So it's a really thought-provoking, really powerful book, really unusual. And I love seeing Emily Gravett's illustrations in this. I think it works. It has this kind of, feels a bit like Japanese painting. I love the simplicity of it. And I think this might be one of my favourite books I've got recently. Yeah, and I think and this is the island where they end up going to. And this is like, yeah, the end of things, and it looks really quite hard, and it's quite sad place. But once the spirits arrive, they're very, very happy. But yeah, I love this. I love the weaving in of magic. And I think I just loved everything about this book, really. The way it's written. I read it in one go. I think I bought it in a shop in the Story Museum in Oxford, and on the bus back to the car park, I actually read the whole thing in one go, which was so good. So yeah, obviously Ireland incredibly integral to this, as a location. And then you've got this journey that happens to the island with these boats, and then that adds this extra bit of adventure and like there's difficulty that happens when they're on the boats, and yeah, they have to kind of overcome quite a lot of obstacles to get to this island. So yeah, it really helps with the storytelling and adds this drama and sense of kind of unease as well. So yeah, that's one of my favourite books that has an island as a setting. And I'll end with this one, which I think a lot of people already know, because it's a best-selling picture book. Benji Davies, obviously, he's a fantastic children's book illustrator, so versatile, and we've had this for quite a few years. We've read this to my son since he was very little, and it's I think many people would probably know about this book, but it's essentially like it's thinking about the idea of moving on, change, death, but acceptance. It's very tender reflection on death. So there's nothing overtly, graphic or really sad. There's like it's a heartbreaking, but it's a very moving, tender way. And yeah, so Davies is obviously fantastic at building these worlds, doing this world building. But it's beautiful. And I'm happy, I love reading this even now. And the idea of, I think if you're kind of approaching, if you want to approach a theme of death and you want to talk to children about death, this is a great book for that. Because the idea of keeping those memories of your loved one close to you, and the fact that they are gone but they are always with us because of we hold them in our heart and our memories. And I think the idea of him going to an island, and that's where he believes he stays, is just beautiful. And yeah, I think just very tender reflection on death. This one is more kind of thought-provoking and more powerful, but this is just it's very beautiful, very subtle, but yeah, done in very different ways, but again using the island as that kind of end point, ending or beginning, depending on how you look at it. So yeah, I think this has been really interesting, really interesting way of trying to figure out my reasons for kind of being a bit drawn to islands as a setting, as a place to visit in person, and how it all kind of, and how it's been used as in stories for a very, very long time. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'd love to hear if there's any recommendations you have that I have not included, which I imagine they are going to be lots and lots and lots. If there's anything in particular you can think of that you think I would like to share with others, please do drop that in the comments and let me know, and I will seek those out. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll speak to you again soon.